Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci fi show where things can get totally radical. Now, today I will be interviewing the writer director of a fucking brilliant horror movie that came out a couple of years ago. It's on Netflix. I recommend it. It's called Beyond the Gates, starring Barbara Crampton, and it's written and directed by Jackson Stewart, who I'll be having on the show today. Jackson, he's pretty close to my age. He's just beginning in the world of horror. And this movie he made is very brilliant, and I'm going to have him on today to talk about horror and how his interest in horror began, and talk a little bit about the movie and stuff and whatever projects he's got going on. And it's going to be pretty cool and stuff. I'm looking forward to it. It's probably I haven't been truly moved by a horror movie in a long time. And when I saw this movie almost 2 years ago, I was just so moved by it. It's a very nice, poetic throwback, no pun intended, to the 80s and to the 80s horror supernatural slasher movies, and I recommend it if you haven't seen it yet. So check it out, Beyond the Gates. And so yeah, here is my interview with Jackson Stewart.
Hello.
Hey there, Jackson. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Are we recording already?
Yeah.
Cool.
This is awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Anytime, buddy. How's your day going?
That's going pretty good. Going pretty good. How's your day?
Uh, nice and mellow so far. Nothing catastrophic happening, thankfully.
Oh yeah, that's always good.
Yeah. So what's the scoop?
What was that?
Oh, I just said what's the scoop?
Well, so were you into horror early on?
Yeah. I mean, I had sort of like a circuitous path to get into it because I mean, I'm 33 now, and I think I'm assuming you're around the same age as me, but
Yeah, I'm 35.
basically like yeah, like our kind of generation, I think all of our exposure to it was either through cable TV or going to the video store, and with me, like I remember seeing like little snippets of different horror movies when I was very young, like 7 or 8. Like I saw some of Friday the 13th when I think I was like 8 or so, and I just remember it. Like it wasn't even a scene with Mrs. Voorhees or anything. It was just like the atmosphere and everything was so spooky to me
Mm-hmm.
that I was like, oh, I can't watch this. This is too scary, and I need to move away from it. And basically, I spent a few years kind of just being terrified of like going into the video store and like looking at the covers to these different horror movies because like they stored up so much stuff within me, like imagining how scary each of them would be without actually having watched any of them. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a imagery and stuff at that age.
Yeah.
When you're kind of like younger than 10, is just really intense, and you tend to like build things up a lot bigger in your head than what the reality of them are. But yeah, so initially I was like very freaked out, and then I think around 12, I was going to the comic book shop regularly, and then I asked like one of the clerks for some good movies, and he recommended Evil Dead 2, and
Mm-hmm.
at the time I was like, oh, that's a horror movie. I don't know if I can watch that. And he's like, no, like trust me, you can handle it. So I watched it, and I thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen, and it thought it was complete genius. And then at that point, I was like, oh, these movies are awesome. I started just trying to watch everything I could get my hands on. Um, but
Nice.
yeah, I mean, it took me a little bit to get there, but it was always like very big. It was always just a very big focal point for me growing up. I mean, more sort of like out of avoidance until I kind of faced the thing, and then had this wonderful experience watching it, but it's I guess it's a good message to just face your fears or whatever you're worried about.
Yeah. So you saying that Friday the 13th was the first horror movie you ever saw?
It was, well, I saw snippets of that first. Like, the first horror movie I ever properly watched was Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, and that
Nice.
just completely shredded my brain at that time, because it was, it was one of these things like the idea of getting killed in your dreams. I think it's just such a potent fear for being, when you're a kid, and it's also just all the stuff they had in that, like there being an invisible Freddy Krueger and all these other just crazy, mind-blowing set pieces. They really, made an impression on me, and I think I was totally traumatized from that for like a year. I think it was like 9 or 10 when I watched it. I can't remember, but
Yeah.
yeah, Nightmare 4 was like the first one I properly watched. Friday the 13th, the original, was like the first one I kind of saw some snippets of, as far as I can remember.
Wow. Because when I was a year old, my parents had me watch The Shining, and it scared the shit out of me, man.
I'm sure. I mean, I'm amazed. It's like, yeah, that's a pretty hardcore movie to show a 1-year-old.
Yeah, my parents are pretty morbid. Uh, I st- we still I still have the tape that it was taped on, but we taped it over in 1987 for Back to the Future. And if you rewind it all the way to the beginning, just before the PG HBO graphics, you see Shelley Duvall talking to the doctor, and it's really spooky.
Oh yeah, well, I always remember those like sort of ghost recordings you'd have from whenever you were recording over, because like you just end up reusing the same tapes over and over. Once you're like, yeah, I'm probably never gonna watch this episode of All in the Family again, or whatever junk you recorded for that Saturday afternoon.
Exactly. Yeah, we were doing that all the time when I was a kid. And I I was very attached to a lot of those tapes. I mean, my brother was always taping over shit that I wish I still had. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it'd be really cool to see those now, just with like whatever the commercial breaks were at the time. Yeah, because I mean, it's so odd because now it's like you just have the movie and like you kind of forget the whole commercial experience of like watching, what like your local the commercial for like your local mattress store or what have you, and
Yeah.
all this other weird crap that they would do.
Oh yes. I used to see. Uh, I grew up in the Bay Area, and we used to have like commercials for like Santa Clara stores of that company that doesn't exist anymore. Levitt's.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
remember them.
Yeah, we used to see advertisements for that and stuff. I have a few tapes left over with those old commercials, and that's one of them. You know. But
Very cool.
what are your favorite horror movies?
Well, my number one is Phantasm, the original. I think that movie's a masterpiece, and that kind of comes closest to. It's like the closest movie I've seen. It just, I mean, not even in horror, just in general, like capturing what it feels like to be like a 12 or 13-year-old boy. It's like I think a lot of that is kind of how young Don Coscarelli was when he made it. I think he was like 19 or 20, and I think he was much closer.
Right.
And I mean, he was obviously much closer in age to when Mike was, but I think there's a real authenticity there that would be much harder to recreate. Like, if I tried to do that now at, 33, I don't know, there's so much time removed and so much experience that kind of gets in the way and erodes those situations that I think a scenario like that's a little bit harder to do the older you get. But
Hmm.
that one, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is a masterpiece. Nightmare on Elm Street 4, even though it's probably not the best story out of the whole franchise, just for nostalgic reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Animator, The Beyond, the Lucio Fulci movie is pretty high up there, and Poltergeist, The Gates. There's a movie I love called Madman. It's like a slasher movie.
Yeah, with Galen Ross.
Yeah. From Dawn of the Dead.
Oh my God, I have a friend who interviewed her on his horror podcast. She did not want to talk about that movie.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too because she's like not even. It's like she used like a pseudonym in it. It's like I can't remember what her pseudonym is in that movie, but it's like I think it's been a little bit. I don't think she had any work between Dawn of the Dead and that. And I'm assuming she just did that for money and hated it, but
yeah,
I think it's got a really cool atmosphere, and it's just those movies like that are just total comfort food for me. I mean, it's certainly not as good as The Shining or Alien or what have you, but it's a blast to watch with your friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my favorites are Friday the 13th, 1980. That's the first slasher movie I ever saw when I was 8 years old, and it's my favorite.
Oh, awesome.
My favorite slasher movie. Yeah, Dawn of the Dead, the original. Um, there was this movie Charlie Band made in the 80s. Nobody knows it when I talk about it. I've only met one person who did, and he never talks about it. And there's not much written about it on the internet. It's called The Alchemist.
Oh, I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's a good little movie. It's a good little movie. I it's always been my favorite. It's actually on that tape that I just told you about. Um, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. That's my favorite.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
That's my favorite of all the Freddy movies, actually.
Yeah, it's right up there.
Yeah. Mirror Mirror.
Still, I think I finally watched that. There's like, how many are there? Like 4 of them?
I think there's maybe 4. Yeah.
Yeah, I should take the first one. I've seen the first one and I thought it was cool, but yeah, I haven't kept up with any of the sequels.
Yeah, I know PJ Souls is in one of them. She plays the mother of
Oh wow.
of one of the girls. Yeah. Dracula 1931. I think it still holds up. Of course, Reanimator.
Yeah. Those are all great.
Yeah. God, there's so many. I'm a Phantasm guy too. Um,
Yeah.
and of course the original Halloween. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's so many I like. I'm not a snob when it comes to classic horror. Have you ever seen Girls' Night Out?
I remember the cover. I feel like I maybe watched it at one point when I was just going, when I was like 16 or 17 and just kind of like running through all those movies like Hide and Go Shriek and, like Final Terror and, like Without Warning. I mean, basically like anything that was just kind of on the video store shelf. But I think I've seen it, but I don't remember it terribly well.
Yeah, it's a favorite slasher of mine, and Britannia Alda's in it, and Julia Montgomery, and I've had them both on the show each 3 times. Yeah, they're really awesome, and they love talking about that movie, even though they think it's a bad movie. They liked making it.
Oh, rad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta revisit it.
Yeah. What horror directors were like your biggest influences growing up?
Well, Sam Raimi was really like the number one, like just from, I mean, like my mind is just still blown from like him going from Evil Dead to Evil Dead 2 to Army of Darkness. It's like I think he's one of the only directors in history that like started in a specific genre and then into the trilogy. It's like in a completely different genre, basically, where it's like a medieval fantasy movie, and it's just so incredible to see him successfully pull that off. Yeah, I always like loved his energy and just attention to detail and just everything he did Argento and Lucio Fulci. Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few. Like, even though Joseph Zito didn't do a ton of horror movies, I love The Prowler and Friday the 13th Part 4. I think those are both terrific.
Yeah, those are good movies. Yeah, when I watch Beyond the Gates, I see a little bit of Raimi influence in the humor that you have in the movie.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll put that on a plaque somewhere in my house. Thank you.
Absolutely. My horror guys growing up were Romero and Carpenter because.
Oh, yeah, Romero is also I ashamed I forgot him, but hey, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you saying?
Yeah, I was gonna say, because they're both really good writers, and I like the way they skewer like military authority. They show them exactly the way that they are in real life. They're just all talk, but they're cowards and they're dumb,
Yeah, I mean it was really interesting seeing how they portrayed that in Day of the Dead, where it's like the military versus science. So I always thought was pretty fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a little weird too because I think it's like it was such a long time before people really started liking that movie just because it wasn't Dawn of the Dead 2.
Yeah.
That they could sort of appreciate it. It's like what happens when like society really goes to shit, and then you're just kind of left with these two different ideologies and how they refuse to compromise with either side. It's pretty advanced stuff.
Yeah. I was also a big Larry Cohen fan too.
Oh yeah, he's terrific.
And I like those like low budget home video schlock guys like Fred Olen Ray and David Dakota and Jim Wynorski.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I haven't seen very much of the Dakota stuff, but Wynorski directed Beastmaster 2, which I'm a big fan of, and Shopping Mall super fun, but Dakota has something like 300 movies or what have you, and it's pretty out of control.
Yeah, him and Jim and Dakota, those three guys, they are probably the most prolific directors in history. They all each got like 600 movies combined. I mean, they're both so prolific.
Oh yeah.
They made those cheap movies like that took like a week to film with like a $50,000 budget. Mostly Fred Olen Ray did though. But yeah.
Yeah, did you go to that screening of Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers and Frankenhooker at the Egyptian?
Oh, I wanted to, man. I didn't get to.
Well, it was really interesting because Fred Olen Ray did a Q&A afterward, and it didn't play terribly well, and then he just went up on stage and he was like, "Yeah, I was curious to see if this movie held up," and it really doesn't. I was like, "Wow, he was just like really harsh on his movie." You know what I mean? I think it was something like they shot it. I think they shot over like 5 or 6 days or something to that effect. I can't remember exactly, but he was just like very honest and kind of upfront about it. And he just directed such an insane number of movies since then. Did you ever hear that commentary for Jacko that he did with Steve Lashaw, the director of it?
No.
It's one of the funniest things I've ever heard, but basically it's like they get into a huge fight in the middle of it, kind of all throughout it. And it's like totally not a bit. Like they're both just completely venomous toward each other, and it's hilarious. I think it might be up on YouTube or something like the commentary, but I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite commentaries of all time.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I talked to Fred this summer. He actually said a lot of good things about about Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. I'm surprised to hear that he was shitting on his own movie at that screening.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was like he just, it's very. I don't. It might have just been in a bad mood or something, but I mean, he was just he was very down on it, which was surprising, because I mean, it played well enough, I mean, I don't know. I think it's also too. I think people just don't really. He's never going to have that relationship with his movie that you or I do when we can just watch it cold and kind of accept it for what it is.
Right.
I think it's like he probably had a much different movie in his head than what they ended up making, and sometimes that's for better or worse. But yeah, I mean he definitely seemed like a good dude all in all, though.
Oh yeah, he's a class act gentleman. That guy.
Indeed, indeed.
Were there any scream queens you had a crush on growing up?
I don't. I'm trying to. I mean, I think there was like. I'm trying to remember because I mean there was probably. I don't. I mean, it was also like I think like by the time I was old enough, I was like more into like like girls at like my high school, than it was like. I think like I don't really remember that because it was just too. I mean, I think like Amy Steele from Friday the 13th Part 2. I definitely had a crush on her and like TJ Souls, but I mean those are kind of the only two that like really stood out for me. Like the rest were. I mean, I mean, it sounds horrible, but I think it's like a lot of like the hairstyles and stuff. Like the era I like.
Yeah.
Like, it's like watching this stuff in the early 2000s. It was, not the hottest look.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely more into like the kind of, girl next door type, like the, Amy Steele and PJ Souls.
Yeah, Emmy Steele looks like my aunt. And yeah, I was into Michelle Bauer, and Linnea Quigley was a huge one for me. I've interviewed her twice, and she interviewed me for her documentary, and I was just nervous.
Cool.
I was nervous the entire time. Like, oh my, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not used to having her in front of me, and me, not touching myself.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think my friend Leif up in Oregon, I think he was kind of similar about that with her. Like, I can't remember what, but he like bought something off of her website. This was like 12 or 13 years ago at this point, but I remember he was like super jazzed about it because I can't remember. It might have been like her workout video or something.
Yeah.
I can't really remember, but yeah, she's always seemed cool. I haven't really seen much of her stuff outside of Return of the Living Dead and Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Night of the Demons. Like those are kind of like the main ones I know her from. Like I never watched. What is it called? Like Vice Academy? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, Vice Academy with Ginger Lynn. Yeah.
Yeah, I never quite got around to those. And she's in Savage Streets also, right?
Oh yes, that's my favorite performance of hers.
Yeah, no, she's really good in that, and Night of the Demons. I think those are my two favorites of hers.
Absolutely. Oh man. Why do you think though that in today's horror, like nobody creates over the top villains like Freddy and Chucky anymore?
I mean, I think there's I think so much of that stuff is kind of like reflective of the times, like for when people were growing up or for what was going on like culturally at the time. So I do think I wouldn't be surprised if we start kind of moving into that now. I mean, like Pennywise, the new It, I would say is definitely like a Freddy-ish, villain. Like they're out there. It's just there's not. Pennywise is really the only main one I can think of, because like all the other ones in the past, 15 years or so. I mean, there's like Jigsaw and stuff, but that's pretty different. I mean, like that's still kind of a theatrical thing, but that's more about like even with that puppet and everything, it's much more about like sort of like what are you willing to do to survive, and it's the onus is very much put on the victim to get themselves out of that, rather than like the the killer like doing something to them. So, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they're probably going to make a stab at it with some of these Conjuring characters, like the Nun, maybe if they do a sequel that'll lean more into like the Freddy thing. I'm really surprised they haven't greenlit another like Nightmare on Elm Street movie at this point. I'm sure they're going to after this weekend, once Halloween makes like $100 million or
Yeah,
whatever.
I think you're right about that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, indeed.
Uh, so when did you move to LA?
I moved here at the beginning of 2007, and I was working at a post-production house. I did that for like a year, and then I'm trying to remember my whole trajectory, but basically, like, I started writing around that time, and then I ended up, like, working for Stuart Gordon for a little bit. I worked on Supernatural as, like, a writer's PA, writer's assistant, and
Right.
then sold, an idea to them, and, got into the Writers Guild off of that, which was really cool, and then basically, like, there was just kind of, like, a few sort of, projects that would kind of keep coming up, or like occasionally would come up. Like I wrote a sci-fi channel movie that is pretty terrible, but yeah, there was like a handful of assignments that sort of came my way. Like I worked for Sylvester Stallone's son, who was
Right.
The president of he owned Grindhouse Releasing, and he had an interest in directing, and I was like writing scripts for him for a little while, none of which got made, but he was paying me to do that, and then yeah, I mean it was sort of a circuitous path to get to the point of making my first movie.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Beyond the Gates when it first premiered at the Alamo in San Francisco 2 years ago, and I have not seen a horror movie in a while that just moved me like that one did.
Oh, thank you, dude. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I truly mean it, man. I mean, I just I just enjoyed it so much, and when Netflix first came out with it, I was just watching it all the time, and I was telling other people to watch it too because I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So you and Steven Scarlatta wrote it. How did you meet him, and you two end up collaborating on it?
Well, so Steve basically, this was another just bizarre thing, but a good reason to just take whatever meetings kind of come your way, even if you're not super psyched about them, because good things can come from them. But we were both asked to direct a segment in an anthology project, which ended up coming out later, and we both actually like did our segments, and then we pulled them. It's a long story, but basically, I met him at this meeting, and we just started chatting there a little bit, and then a couple days later, he was at my editor's birthday party, and I sat down next to him, and we started talking about all these movies that were never made, and like the Darren Aronofsky Batman Year One, and there was like a Watchmen movie that Sam Hamm, the guy who wrote the original Batman, had written, and just a lot of a lot of stuff like that. So him and I met, and just had coffee this one day, and we started talking about our different ideas we had that we never really done anything with. And then he told me, it's like, oh, I had this idea about like a VCR board game that these two brothers find in their dad's video store, and it leads to another dimension. And as soon as I heard that, I was just like, that idea is fucking amazing. That's everything I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I insisted we started writing on it that day, and then basically like we just wrote on it every single day, like up until shooting, and then even through shooting. So, and it was also kind of nice too, because he was on the Curiosity was on the Oscar shortlist at the time, which he produced that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really helpful with getting financing, because we say, like, this guy's got a movie on the Oscar shortlist and all this other stuff, and it was super helpful. But yeah, like meeting Steve just totally changed my life, and we're still really close friends, and he's been a terrific guy, to collaborate with, and just, as a friend outside of that.
That's great. Yeah, when I watch the movie, I see flourishes, Phantasm, The Gate, A Little Nightmare on Elm Street, and were you influenced at all by Kevin Tenney's Witchboard?
I mean, I've seen it, multiple times, so I'm sure on some level. I mean, our real influences were, kind of the ones you said, like The Gate, Phantasm, certainly the Beyond. We were both watching like a ton of Lucio Fulci stuff, and Nightmare on Elm Street, of course, is like, probably going to be an influence on everything I ever do. But yeah, I mean, I was definitely familiar with it before. I own a copy of it, and I've seen it a bunch. But we were more kind of like, we're looking at like Poltergeist and trying to, just really stay in these like constraints kind of from that era. And even though Witchboard does fall in that, it wasn't like a super influential movie to me growing up, but I totally enjoyed it. It's super entertaining.
Mm-hmm. And did you two take it around to other people before Barbara Crampton got involved?
Yeah, actually, I mean, it was. I mean, this is completely. I mean, my own idiocy, but basically, we actually like shot. I'm not gonna say who, but we did shoot it with another actress on it initially, because actually Barbara came on just as a producer originally, because she read the script and liked it, and helped us with a little bit of the financing. But initially it was very much supposed to be kind of like a vampire type character, which Barbara, is certainly like not immediately who you had come to mind with that. But
Yeah.
we it kind of reached this weird thing though, where it's like we shot this footage, and it was just like we really need someone who's like a connection to the the world we're referencing, and it just felt like there was a real gap in the cast for that. And then I did a little soul searching on us. I think Barbara would be perfect for this. And it was just super fun to have her play like a proper villain, and get to go into that, which she hasn't. She's done stuff like that since then, but I mean at the time it was really uncommon for her. I think she played the villain in maybe like one or two other movies at that point, and it was also, I think we shot this like just before We're Still Here came out, and then that kind of like helped kickstart her renaissance. But yeah, I mean, it was, I think at one point we like talked about Lisa Marie from Ed Wood being, being
Yeah.
Evelyn character. I think there was one other person now that I'm totally facing. But yeah, it was Barbara was just it all happened for a reason. I mean, Barbara was perfect in that role. And I can't believe I didn't think of it sooner. It was just like basically staring me in the face the whole time. But yeah, that's sort of the story though.
Yeah, she is perfect for it. And I'm really curious though because so you had her so you thought it was a good project for her to produce. She hadn't really produced anything before, had she? Though.
No, that was her first real foray, and I think she's still doing it a little bit. You know, I mean, we're still talking about doing Beyond the Gates too, which she'd be involved with that as a producer, and same with and Brian Usna was a fan of the first one. He wanted to get involved with it, but yeah, she hadn't really done that at that point, and I think she's like doing the Castle Freak remake
Yeah.
now. Like they're getting ready to. I think they just finished writing the script, and then they're probably going to go into production sometime soon on that. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and she also, I remember she said at the Q&A for it too. She said she took a while before reading it, but she eventually relented.
Yeah, yeah. I had to really like pound her to, I think, even posting the thing, and then when she did, she really liked it. But yeah, it's very common out here. It's like it takes a lot of doing to get people to, you know, read your script, and then it's even more doing to convince them to finance your movie. So.
Yeah.
But it's possible though. I mean, it's just it just takes some endurance.
I know it is. I'll tell you. I have this one script. I sent it to one of my guests on the show, who's from one of the Halloween sequels, and she actually did read it, and she said it's one of the best scripts she's ever read. She just wishes
Oh wow.
she wishes though she had clout left over in Hollywood to get it produced and stuff, but she doesn't. But she said if I can get financing and stuff, she'll be a part of it. With the part that I wrote for her and stuff.
Oh, awesome. Oh, that's great, man. What subgenre is it in?
It's a supernatural slasher. It's actually like what I was talking about how Hollywood doesn't have the over the top villains, and I have an over the top villain for this movie actually.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Um, I'm down with that.
Thank you very much. But yeah, I love the father and son story. It's very Spielberg-esque.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, like that. Pretty much all my favorite movies just kind of like revolve around that. I mean, like outside of horror, I was just super into Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade when I was growing up, and Return of the Jedi, and just a lot of there were so many of those movies from that era that kind of tapped into it. But yeah, I mean, it's very right thematic material.
Yeah, and I love that music at the beginning and end of the movie. It reminds me of Depeche Mode with a little bit of Tangerine Dream and John Carpenter combined.
Oh, well, I'll tell Vincenzo Salvia you said that. I think he'll get a kick out of it. Yeah, we sensed that song in, and then I was just like, God, this is fucking perfect. And then I remember being like, I was like, what if I can just hit this guy up and see if he'll let us do it? And then, I mean, we paid him a little bit of money, but he was totally game. It was really cool. Though. I mean, that song just set the tone perfectly. I was so happy he agreed to let us use it because I mean, like I love the music that Wojciech, the main composer, did, but
Mm-hmm.
that theme song I think was really cool and just it fit the thing like a glove.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, are you working on a new movie now?
Yeah, it's called The Day After Halloween. It's obviously no relation to the regular Halloween franchise, but it's basically like looking at what happens to the final girl after the end of the slasher movie, and it sort of goes into like like what if every bad thought you ever had suddenly became real, type of thing. So it's there's a lot of like id and just identity and those types of themes going into it. But where Steve and I co-wrote the story on that. We're doing that. There's a couple other things I'm doing which I probably can't talk about yet. They're like bigger and with a couple like notable producer types. But we're figuring out Gates 2, which we have an outline for it, and basically what I'm deciding if I'll just write and produce it, or just produce it, or like I might maybe I'll write and direct it. I'm not entirely sure. We're having phone calls about that. I have another. It's a little tricky because it's like I think you want to branch out a little bit on your second movie, and it's it's like because otherwise I think you can box yourself in very quickly. But I just had such a blast, like working with Barbara and like being in that world and everything, and it would be nice to have like a little bit more money on a sequel to do things a little bit bigger. But those are really like the two main things at the moment. There's other stuff that I'm writing, which will be way down the pipeline. But those are the main ones right now.
Nice. Now, are you doing conventions?
I never have. I gladly would. I've had like as silly as it sounds, I've had like a couple people like recognize me, which is cool. But I think I need to have a few more under my belt before before that. I think just the festival world is probably the best way to connect with people at the moment until I have like an Adam Wingard career or one of those guys. But that's about the scoop.
Yeah, I did my first festival earlier this year, and oh my God, I had a lot of fun. I want to do more festivals because I've just been doing.
Oh yeah, they're the best.
I've just been doing conventions the last couple of years strictly.
Oh.
And I need
to
I need to branch out and do and do festivals too.
Yeah, which festival were you at?
I was at Silver Scream Fest in Santa Rosa, and Barbara was there.
What's that?
Barbara was there.
Yeah. I remember her telling me about that. I think they played Dead Night there.
I think Dead Night was there.
Yeah.
Killer Clowns was being played, and for some strange reason they had Superman play because it was the 40th anniversary. Yeah.
Man, it's a great movie. Like,
it's the best. It's the best.
Yeah, maybe.
It's the best superhero movie ever made, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I was always a massive fan of that movie. I think it's definitely gotten a respect. But it's like weird. Like people don't talk about it quite as much. I think just because it's like the Marvel machine is so much like dominating our society right now. But yeah, that's the original like Richard Donner Superman. It's like a superbly made film.
Yeah. The only Marvel movies I like are the Deadpool movies.
Yeah, I like a few of the X-Men movies. I like the first Deadpool. I actually really like Ragnarok, which I saw kind of recently. But I've missed a ton of them since. I feel like I've missed like the last like 4 of them or something. I have like a hard time picking up. It feels like they put a new one out every 2 months.
Yeah. I like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, but then.
Oh, I love those.
after he got disinvolved with the franchise and Tobey Maguire was gone, they're just not the same.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I do. I don't know. I was really kind of like hopeful when they were announcing that Spider-Man was going to be in I guess it's Captain America: Civil War or something. But
Yeah.
I think for a minute they were talking about having Tobey Maguire do it. And I thought that was such a good idea. And then I guess they wanted to have him be in high school or whatever. But yeah, I really didn't. I didn't really care for the two Mark Webb entries and Homecoming I think was fine, but I love the Raimi ones ran through. Like even Spider-Man 3 for being flawed, I think is pretty fun movie.
Mhm. Yeah. I just it's just they're dominating the box office, and that's why great horror movies like Beyond the Gates doesn't get huge box office numbers, because every turn you look, there's a Marvel movie dominating the box office.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also too. It's like I do think there's a real home for these things that didn't exist, like 20 or 30 years ago. Because now it's like, when people watch it on Netflix, like, millions of people have seen it at this point, and it's like that's really cool. And like, when you had this stuff just being on VHS back in the day, like that it was just impossible. But now it's like accessible to everyone, and it's like all kind of under the umbrella. I think it's actually a really good thing because people can see these smaller movies, and there's like a sturdy home for them. Or they can come out and you can check them out. They don't have to be in competition with Avengers 5 or whatever, and people can just watch them at their leisure. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. I'm a VHS guy, and I always will be, and I still collect them. Yeah.
Yeah, same here.
Well, Jackson, I appreciate your time today, man. I hope I get to meet you in person at a festival or a con someday. And
Yeah, absolutely, dude. We will for sure.
yes, absolutely. I thank you so much, and I'll be watching for your new movies when they come out and stuff, and keep up to date with that. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you very much for having me on.
My pleasure. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Take care.
Take care. Well, there you have it. Jackson Stewart. Ain't he a cool dude? Thank you so much, Jackson. You're a really cool guy, and you made a really awesome movie, and I know you're going to continue having success in horror and stuff. It's always great to talk to somebody my own age who can relate and talk about horror, and it doesn't happen very often on this show, so thank you. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, add me as a friend on Facebook, join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.